Yeah, no, that's a surprising thing for my students here at Chapel Hill is, most of them just kind of think, I think like most people do, that the Bible descended from heaven. These 27 books descended from heaven a few weeks after Jesus died. And no, it didn't work like that.
Many people don't really understand what the Bible actually is, what it contains, how it was compiled. As Dr. Ehrman mentioned, many people seem to just assume the Bible was a book that descended from the heavens.
AP and Hatun, two quick questions. One, do you believe that the Bible just fell out of heaven as a book? No. AP?
No.
Okay. Follow-up question. Sajid they said most people just assume. Okay. Have you ever met one Christian who thinks that the Bible just came down out of heaven as a book? Have you ever met anyone like that?
Nope.
So he's saying most of his students think that, first of all, Bart, no, most of your students do not believe that the Bible just fell out of heaven. He's got to be using some sort of hyperbole here. Sajid doesn't understand that he's using some level of hyperbole. You seem to have taken Bart Ehrman literally there, and many people believe this. Sajid, no one believes this, which means that your entire video is going to be responding to a straw man. Here's the interesting thing, Sajid. If Ehrman looked at the history of the Quran, he would say the exact same thing about you guys. He would say, oh, yeah, I get all these Muslim students coming in here, and they think the Quran is just descended from heaven when what? When, okay, Muhammad's delivering these revelations or writing them down on scraps of bones and so on. They try to preserve it by memory. It doesn't work. A bunch of it gets lost because people are dying in battle and sheep are eating the only written passages and so on. And then, we get all these differences and we have to burn all these manuscripts and so on. And then, we still have differences later on. Well, let's say that there are 7 different Qira'at. There are 7 different versions of the Quran. They all go back to Muhammad. And then, we need more than that. So let's have 10 and so on. Then, let's have 14. Those are all human decisions, Sajid. And then, of course, you go back to Muhammad's companions. They couldn't even agree on which chapters are supposed to be in the Quran. Those are the sorts of things that Bart Ehrman would look at and he would say, so these Muslims, they just think the Quran came down from heaven. No, it was a long, drawn out, difficult process of trying to figure these things out. That's what he would say. So this entire criticism that you're using here, that applies to you actually way more than it applies to Christians. Because you guys are closer to believing that the Quran just fell out of heaven. Even you don't believe the Quran just fell out of heaven or something like that. But you believe that it's all airtight and it was all compiled and put together and memorized and everything else during the time of Muhammad, and that this is as good as gold and it's been transmitted. Okay, you guys have a delusional belief about your book. Sajid, why are you going to a guy who, if he looked at the history of your book and what you believe about the history of your book, which completely contradicts the actual history of your book, he would think, wow, these guys act like their book fell from heaven. They have no clue about how human this process was. Why would you quote a guy like this, Sajid? The other very interesting feature of all this is Sajid is going to Bart Ehrman. Why? Because he can't go to his God and he can't go to his prophet. Because his God and his prophet agree with us. Sajid's God, Allah, and Sajid's prophet, Muhammad, agree with us on this issue, which forces him to go somewhere else. Let's just look at what his prophet says. Muhammad says, the Torah, the underlined portion, the Torah and the Injil are with the Jews and Christians, but what do they avail of them? The Torah and the Injil are with the Jews and Christians. This is Muhammad speaking. Do Jews and Christians have the Torah and the gospel? Yes, we do. So guys, if we had Muhammad sitting here, we said, Muhammad, do Jews and Christians have the Torah and the gospel? Muhammad would say yes. If we turn to Sajid, who's also in the room, and we say, Sajid, do Jews and Christians have the Torah and the gospel? Sajid would say, no, of course you don't. And then we would say, Sajid, your prophet's right beside you and he says we have him. And Sajid would say, I don't care what that idiot says. He doesn't know. I only listen to Bart Ehrman. That's what Sajid would do. And that's Islam. It's the religion of submitting to Allah by obeying Muhammad, while not submitting to Allah and not obeying Muhammad. If you were to listen to Bart Ehrman and so on talking about the development, and I know because me and AP have interviewed him and asked him these kinds of things. At the end of the day, if you say, where do you go to learn about Jesus? Ehrman would say you go to the Gospels and the letters of Paul. That's where you go to learn about Jesus. Those are your historical sources. You can learn some other things from other places. That's the main place you go to. If you ask Bart Ehrman, do you go to the Quran to learn about Jesus? Or, Bart, how many scholars in the world go to the Quran as a historical source about the historical Jesus? Not a source about what Muslims believe about Jesus, but how many scholars go to the Quran as a historical source about the life of Jesus? 0. 0 is the answer. Now, why is that relevant? Sajid, you're sitting here. Let's go with Bart Ehrman and how he's looking at these things and get his perspective on how this stuff relates to Jesus. He would giggle you out of the room if you started talking about the Quran, getting your historical information about Jesus from the Quran. Why are you going to atheists and their historical methods when it would not work? You hypocrite.
I actually asked Bart Ehrman precisely that question. I even have it clipped. I asked him if it would be a good idea to take the Quran as historical source to learn about Jesus. He said, of course not. It doesn't have any historical value or any historical relevance to Jesus or to Christianity at all.
You want us to take Ehrman's criticisms of the New Testament, which, by the way, you don't even understand. You don't even understand them. You do the same thing you always do. You go and you filter everything through an Islamic lens, and you think these guys are affirming what you say, and they are not. But let me give you an example. Bart Ehrman, there's a quote from him. One of the most certain facts of history is that Jesus was crucified on orders of the Roman prefect of Judea, Pontius Pilate. Says it's one of the most certain facts of history. That's the guy you're quoting. So he agrees with what? He agrees with the Gospels on that issue. He doesn't agree with you. He thinks your book is wrong. This is what you're doing. So anyway, you filter everything and you think he's agreeing with you, not realizing, one, he doesn't agree with you. He agrees that the New Testament is the best preserved book of the ancient world. You believe the opposite. You believe the Bible's been horribly, horribly, horribly changed. And you think there are all these different Bibles out there and saying all these different things and that some of them agree with you and Christians pick the ones that don't. That's complete idiotic nonsense. A matter of fact, I asked Ehrman, I was like, hey, in studying, going to textual criticism and stuff, do you ever get to a layer where Jesus didn't die on the cross or didn't write? Did you get to anything like that? He said, no.
Muslims believe that prophets Moses and Jesus were sent down divine books. And this sort of thing is something I keep emphasizing and repeating because there is so much false conflation between the actual Torah and Injil that Allah sent down to his prophets with the Bible, which is a different book.
Quick problem here. Bible is putting the Torah and the gospel together into one book, along with some letters and things like that. The word Bible just means book. Your book keeps calling us the people of the book and referring to the book that we read. You're saying it's not the Bible. What book is it then? You still won't answer. What book is the Quran saying that we have and that we read? Did everyone catch what Sajid just said? We believe in the Torah and the gospel given to Moses and Jesus. But the problem that Christians and Jews have is they think this is referring to the Bible that they have today. Sajid, where did we get that idea? We get that idea from your God and your prophet. Again, let's just recap here, Sajid. What does your God and your prophet say? He uses the same words, Torah and Injil. He uses the exact same words for the revelations given to Moses and Jesus. He uses the exact same words, Torah and Injil. So he says, hey, the Torah and the Injil were given to Moses and Jesus. And then he says, and you have the Torah and the Injil. And Sajid, you say, no, you don't have the Torah and the Injil. Stop lying. You don't have the Torah and the Injil. Okay, who's lying? It's your prophet. This is Sunan Abu Dawud 4449. A group of Jews came and invited the messenger of Allah to Kuf, so he visited them in their school. They said, Abul Qasim, one of our men has committed fornication with a woman, so pronounce judgment upon them. They placed a cushion for the messenger of Allah, who sat on it and said that they would sit a cushion for this is the judge of this dispute. So they placed a cushion for the messenger of Allah who sat on it and said, bring the Torah. What does he say? Does he say, bring me whatever book you have that's not the Torah? No. Muhammad, so what's already assumed? Muhammad assumes that they actually have the Torah. They have it. Sajid, if Muhammad's saying, bring me the Torah, do they have the Torah? Unless he's just saying, haha, you don't have the Torah, so you're going to try and bring it to me, but you won't be able to because you don't have it. Ha ha. He said, bring the Torah. It was then brought. Wait a minute, what was brought? They don't have it according to Sajid. Muhammad says, bring the Torah. It was then brought. What was brought? They don't have the Torah according to Sajid. He then withdrew the cushion from beneath him and placed the Torah on. Wait, how did he place the Torah on it? They don't have the Torah. He doesn't have the Torah. Sajid says they don't have the Torah. He doesn't have the Torah. So he then withdrew the cushion from beneath him and placed the Torah on it, saying, I believed in thee and in him who revealed thee. So he has believed in this book and in the one who revealed it. Sajid, do you believe in the book, in the Torah that was in front of him? And do you believe in the one who revealed him? No, you don't believe in either. You don't believe in the one who revealed the Torah because the one who revealed the Torah says we still have it and you say we don't. So you don't believe in him. And you don't believe in that Torah that your prophet believed in. So you're contradicting your God and your prophet. Everyone who's watching, if you don't take away anything else, think about how absolutely insane this is. Sajid is claiming the Torah was given to Moses and was then lost. And that what Jews and Christians had later on was not the Torah and was not the gospel. His prophet says, bring the Torah. They bring it. He says, I believe in you and in the one who revealed you. You can't make up the level of insanity of these Dawah guys. You made up characters in a fictional work about people who are completely insane and were completely deranged and delusional and couldn't formulate a coherent position about anything and would say they believe something and yet every single thing they say and do contradicts what they're claiming. You could not make up something as dysfunctional as the Dawah community.